Thank you very much for joining us. This is another edition of our Morning Money Conversations. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us. As life would have it, sometimes you get thrown these curveballs, and the other half of Stef and Drew is out of commission this morning. The weather this time of the year, many of us get sick. We get, our throat starts to bother us. We get the colds and the flus and that sort of stuff. So he was a last minute cancellation. So Andrew and I decided, okay, are we going to cancel the conversation? Or are we going to have the conversation? And I decided to have the conversation because, while, we can't live our lives scripted because our life is not scripted. So a bit about myself. My name is Raymond. I am a mortgage broker, retired. I've spent 30 years in the financial services sector, 25 years as a mortgage broker. I've worked with clients throughout the Caribbean and in Canada. I've helped clients relocate to many parts of the Caribbean. I'm currently based in Northeast Florida and Guyana and working with clients in the diaspora who want to relocate either to parts of Florida and parts of the Caribbean. My colleague here, Andrew Stewart, is a very good friend of mine. I've known Andrew for almost 15 years. We've done a series of conversations in the past on a platform with a few other colleagues. And Andrew and I have maintained a very, very good friendship over the years. So I'll let Andrew tell you a bit about himself, and then we can have a very casual, informal conversation about what we do and how we do it. Andrew, thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Ray. So yes, my name is Andrew Stewart. I am the owner of DF Insurance Solutions. I've been in the financial services industry for going on 20 years. Started in the P&C, then had some experiences with doing mortgages as well, not as well as Ray, but then I transitioned over to being a financial advisor. And I pretty much work with the family market professionals and small business owners on how to implement strategic insurance and estate planning solutions that not only help them grow their wealth, but protect it and make sure that it's being able to pass down to their next generation on a tax efficient basis.
Thanks, Andrew. Um, Let me tell you something, man. The success wasn't always successful. I've had my struggles. Building for yourself from zero um, is takes a lot of grit and resource. There were days when I wanted to give up, but I knew that the alternative wasn't something that I wanted to participate in. I was not interested in being an employee. And I had great jobs in Canada. My last job before I got into the mortgage broker's business or the investment planning business was for a major financial institution. And I had a pretty decent job with them as a high net worth financial advisor. And that position I held was an education in itself because I saw the disconnect or the differences between how certain communities plan their future, how they plan for their families, and how some communities don't. And when I first started out, like yourself, out in the life insurance business, I sold life insurance back in the early '90s. I had a very successful first year because I sold to all my friends and family, and then the policy started to lapse because they saw no value in the product, and I didn't know how to create value for them at that time. But now I know how to create value. Did you have the same experience in your life when you first started? Because I know the first thing you do is approach those people you know. Did you have the same challenge with the chargebacks and that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the industry is set up, or these companies that are well known, such as the Sun Lifes, the RBCs, the Canada Lifes, when they attract advisors, it's set up for they know that the only real people that the advisor knows is friends and family. So they tell you to do a M100, which is write 100 names of your closest friends and family, and that's going to be who you're going to prospect first. And like you said, at that point, you're new. So you have no way of positioning the value. You don't even know the products to the full extent or the proper way to structure these plans or how deep this rabbit hole goes and how robust you can make a plan for somebody. So your knowledge is very, very small, but you're talking to the most important people in your lives. And when they do that, they usually do it because of the relationship that you build. You and I both know that this is a relationship business. People do business with who they like and trust. And it's unfortunate that those are the first people that you're talking to. So, like yourself, I did the same thing. went to my friends and family, and it either A, lapses, or they don't refer anybody to you because they themselves are not sure on are you going to provide the best value to who they refer them to. So yeah, same experience as well as you.
Now, 15 years later, what are you doing different today that you did then when you first started? So
Well, now
you are 15 years in the business now, right?
yeah,
That's a
15
long
years.
time. That's a long time.
And I'm thankful for it. And not everybody who gets into this business lasts that long. I think the average lifetime frame of an advisor is 3 years to 5 years, and then they're out. And then they're either back doing a 9 to 5 or doing what they did previously. So I'm blessed and I'm happy that I've been able to stay the course. And one thing that I probably noticed and that I do differently is now two things. I do a stronger fact find to find out what's the true why of the client. And I now have a defined process of education and then support along the way. I find that if you don't have a set defined process, instead of just going in and trying to sell a product, trying to sell one simple solution, then it's always going to end up on the wrong end of things where the client still doesn't remember a conversation that you had 3 years ago, and they end up somebody new comes in, talks a slick game, and then they end up going with that new person and they end up forgetting what they did with you. So now one thing I'm definitely doing is I have a longer process in regards to how I treat my clients instead of just trying to go in and make one simple sale.
Do you find yourself getting a lot of referrals from your existing client base?
Yeah. Yeah. My probably say 90% of my business is still based off of referrals. Now, a lot of advisors and a lot of people will say, "Oh, that's not sustainable. It's not. You have to do marketing. You have to get cold calling. Yes, you do all those things, but I find if you can have a client that come in the door off the word of mouth of somebody else that you've already serviced, 50%, if not higher, of the work is already done. Then it's
Right.
just really about maintaining and seeing if you two are a good fit business wise. Because just because it was a referral doesn't mean it's going to be an automatic, we're going to work together. The client is interviewing me just as much as I'm interviewing the client.
Yeah, you're correct. Because I mean, the way we built it was the same way. I mean, I did what was called guerrilla marketing back in the 90s. Um, I was talking to a colleague, you may know him, he's actually one of the co-founders of ACBN. And
Yes.
I was sharing with him when I first started, I used to walk the streets of Eglinton and give out business cards to individuals. Um, and just collect people's information. And many people I know today, I'm talking 94, so it's actually 30 years ago. I mean, many of the folks are still in the business. But, to your point, as a mortgage advisor, I don't even know the interest rates are today. I have never paid any attention to interest rates because the value we provided wasn't in knowing the best rate or giving you the best rate. It was giving you the best solution based on your circumstances. So, I
Absolutely.
mean, clients would call the office, what's your best 5-year rate? And I told them, I don't know. If you want to know your best rate, let's go to the TD Bank's website. And that's what I'll tell them. And this is what you mean. So I can't tell you what the best rate is. I don't even know who you are.
Mm,
I don't know anything about you. I don't know whether you're buying a property to live in. That's an investment property. Is it a cottage? Are you buying land? Is your credit score 500? Is your credit score 850? Is your salary $200,000 a year? Are you self-employed and showing zero income? So I can't answer the question. So, like you said, it was about building the relationship and educating the client. And I mean, you've seen the proof in the pudding. 25 years later, Stef is working that exact same database that I built 25 years ago. And he's down to the same clients that I spoke to 25 years ago, plus their children. So for me, it was the legacy creation that was important. And, I started looking at the business from a legacy point of view. As my kids started to get older, I started to decide, okay, how do I now transfer this business to them? And the good thing about it is that my kids were always in the office when they were younger. So Alika, my daughter, played piano right next door to the office. So every Monday she was in the office, and like that was their Friday hang. If it's a PA day, it's a pizza day in the office, and they love to file and shred and that kind of stuff. So most of my clients have known my children since they were 8 and 9 years old. So it wasn't difficult for us to transition. So the challenge we have now is how to make our database younger. So if you look at what we focus on, a lot of what we do is mortgage refinance and investment planning, investment properties, rental properties. And then we look at a lot of reverse mortgages because we have a very aged database. So the challenge that Stefan has right now is to make the database younger. The problem we have is because property is so expensive in the GTA, it's very difficult for 25 and 30-year-olds, if they aren't married or have support from their family, to buy in the GTA. So we got to educate the client now on rent where you live and buy to rent. It's the way I came up with. So instead of trying to buy a property to live in the GTA for $800,000 on $80,000 a year, I mean, it's going to be very challenging for you. If you're still in your parents' home, or you can rent a small apartment and have a roommate, or rent with your girlfriend, fiance, or even if you're a young married couple, and then buy somewhere else. And that's the advice that we give clients today. Look, there are markets where you can buy and the cash flow makes sense. And there are many of them across Canada. There's the East Coast, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. There's parts of Calgary. And there's still parts of Windsor and Hamilton where you can do it. And get away from the single family home and look at now buying multifamily homes, small multifamily. So you've got multiple streams of rent coming from one property, right? You got 4 units. Well, yeah, I agree with you. You know what I mean? So, I mean,
So I have a question for you, Ray. And
sure.
I've come across this with, like you said, the challenge of working with younger clientele that don't have either the income or the savings. Now, what is your thought on parents and the database that you have of accessing the equity in their home to help their children buy their first property? Would you suggest that they help their child buy their first property, or still use the same strategy that you said of buy a rental property in the child's name? What's your thoughts on if you were going to access property of your main home, would you help your child buy their first home with it?
No, you're asking the wrong person that question because I have a bias. I am more informed than the average Black Canadian family. You know, I've been in the business for 30 years, 25 years. So for me, and that's where the education piece comes in, right? Many Caribbean folks have an emotional attachment to home ownership. And the first thing you have to do is to break that emotional cycle, right? So they buy a home, small town house in John Garland or one of those, those communities, Mac living out in this East End, Malvern area, small town house. Then they move into a semi, probably in Pickering. Then they move into a bigger house out in Uxbridge, Caledon. So you know what I'm saying, right? But at no point are they looking to buy other properties. And when they buy other properties, they tend to buy it under the same guise, and they use the same parameters when they bought a house to live in. So they aren't investor focused, right? And I was telling you, I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and this is a white Canadian who moved from Canada to Antigua. Doesn't have any family in Antigua. Their sold all his assets in Canada, packed up, right? And I think I spoke about this the other day, the 80-20 rule, right? So most people we talk to aren't mentally equipped to understand the conversation, right? If you have a home today in the GTA worth $1.3 million, the focus of most Black homeowners is paying their mortgage off. And once they pay it off, they say, okay, I'm mortgage free. That means absolutely nothing. You're mortgage free with a net worth of less than $100,000. Then you remove that asset from the equation. I mean, and you can better speak to that. I mean, what's the average net worth of a Black Canadian in the Greater Toronto area? I'm pretty sure that's $100,000.
It's under 50,000 and under.
And the reason I know that, because if they're trying to buy a second or a third home, most people, 99% of those people don't have the 25% deposit cash on hand to make the second deposit. They don't have it. So I know they have no money. It's always in a HELOC or multiple credit cards, or it has to be equity takeout. So the advice from me is forget this whole emotional thing with home ownership. It's a waste of time. The home you live in is not a bank machine. It's never going to make you any money. At least not in Canada. It's a little different in America because you've got different tax laws in America. In Canada, your interest is not taxed. Nothing you do to your home in Canada is tax deductible. And if it is, it's minimal. It doesn't make a difference to your tax return. You know, the home office and all that stuff is just nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, what you're getting back from the tax rates you're going to get don't really offset the investment. So buy investment properties. What do I recommend? Low-end condos with higher than average condo fees that are larger in older buildings. Why? Because you put families in them. So Trickery, for example, you've got three-bedroom condos at 1,200 square feet. The condo fee is $1,000 a month. And that's the other thing also. Forget the condo fee. You aren't living in it. It's an investment property. And again, these emotional knee-jerk reactions, ignore the condo fee. The condo fee is all-inclusive. It covers parking, maintenance, electricity, hydro, and sometimes cable. And that's the thing you have to look at. What does the condo fee cover? Are there any deficiencies? So all the condos that are large, 2 bedrooms and up, the 1-bedroom market is a very small market. The people who come to this country are families. They have to live somewhere. They're coming from part of the Middle East. There are 4 or 5 people in a household. Not everyone wants to live in the basement. Not everyone wants to live in the suburbs. They need to live where there's 24-hour bus service. You want to buy the condos where there's 24-hour blue light service and TTC lines. Toronto, right? Anywhere east of the 427, anywhere west of Markham Road, Morningside coming back. Just a little north of Steeles down to the lake. That's your geographic area. Next, older bungalows, old neighborhoods, Southdown, Clarkson, Malton, places where our parents bought their first home. Those homes are back splits. You can buy those homes, probably around 800,000, and then you reconfigure the entire home to turn it into a 3-family home now. Right? You can spend about 100 grand. You're not building a palace. And you can still buy those properties if your child's going to buy it with a smaller down payment. I suggest 10% or more because it's a little easier, right? And now you're renting those units anywhere in the GTA. Close to the airport, you're renting probably at about $2,000 a month for each unit. That's $6,000 a month income, right? But, turn it into a 3-bedroom. The ones with the walk outdoor next to the garage, you should be familiar with those homes, actually. Out in Scarborough, you see them. There's a door. You cut that part up, you close the garage off, knock the wall out, and you got a 1-bedroom down there or a 2-bedroom. And then the rest of the house, you divide it into 2 units, and you've got 3 units in the house, sometimes 4. Now, I prefer 2-bedroom units as opposed to 1-bedroom, because again, you want to house families. You want to make a contribution to the housing crisis, right? And the people who are most impacted by the housing crisis are single Black women with children, right? So we want to cater for them. Men will live anywhere. We sleep in our car if it's necessary. But we want to make sure that our women are protected and have a safe place to live. Then beyond that, you want to get to like 4 units now, right? The legal quad fourplex. Higher price point, higher rents, right?
But less qualification on yourself to qualify.
Less on yourself. Now, yeah, you the rental offsets, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Again, you want to buy in walkable communities. We can get outside, get on the bus, walk to your local Sobeys, walk to No Frills, walk to employment, right? The suburban investment, which everybody is doing, is not ideal. There's no amenities. There's no infrastructure. There are no cultural things for us who just came from the Caribbean. We want to live close to everything. I'll share a story with you. We have some clients who bought some property up in, there's a town past, I think it's Tilsonburg. I can't remember where it is. It's up Highway 10 going north. And everybody's buying there. It's going towards Barry. I think that there's a Black guy there who was mayor a few years ago. I can't remember his name now. I think he's an attorney. But he was either mayor or deputy mayor. And it's great. You can go up there and buy a house for $200,000, 2-car garage, 45-foot frontage. But it's a bedroom community. There's nothing there. And one of our long-term clients convinced her brother to buy a property up there. The guy was probably in his 70s. He was a truck driver. His hobbies include going to the local spot on Friday night, eating an escovitch fish, drinking 2 Red Stripe, and playing dominoes. And I'm sorry Stef is not here today, but he would have told you this, because Stef actually worked with this client. And it was eye-opening for Stef because he grew up with his grandparents, his grandmother lives with them. And he saw for the first time how older Caribbean men function. The guy moved to this place, I think it's Tilsonburg, the name of the neighborhood, the community. And then he got there and he's now isolated
By
from his
families.
buddies. He's known for the last, this is an older guy who's Jamaican, raw Jamaican accent. You know, he doesn't trust a lot of people. He came to like Step a whole lot. They had a really good friendship, a really good bond. Step would take him to the bank to get, he didn't like going to the bank because people didn't look like him, you know, and with his accent, they couldn't understand what he was saying half the time. Um, and he had a very difficult time. He actually moved back. He left the house, rented it for less than the monthly mortgage payments,
Wow.
and moved back to Toronto because his mental health started to take a toll. He was isolated. He was a man in his 70s who was, I think his wife had died or he was never married, right? And he was down, I think he lived down somewhere close to Lawrence and Jane, Eglinton and Jane area. But that was his life, right? So, you know, I try to convince people that we have to start buying property that our aging population want to live in. Because many of our older Canadian residents, mostly women, are single and don't own homes. They're renting. And while they're working still, it's fine. But once they stop working and they collect that $3,000 a month pension, if it's that much, what are they going to do? Where are they going to live?
It's definitely a problem that I've
I
seen.
mean, you can see better. I mean, you were doing the insurance side. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how old your client base is, but you're seeing it. I mean, it is our responsibility to provide a solution, right? And we have to have those conversations.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. My clientele is not as aged as your database. As mine is roughly anywhere between, you know, 35 to 55. I have a few people that are approaching retirement years. But in regards to the planning and education side of it, just speaking on the mindset of understanding what an asset is. Um, you know, we're taught the normal things of what the government wants us to know as far as savings and putting the money aside in our RSPs or the TFSAs or the two programs that most people are aware of and are limited to, but their mindset of creating assets outside of that um, is where one, fear of it, and then two, usually speaking with somebody who is doing it and has actually done it,
Yes.
right? And that's what I think is key. Most people can go to any bank teller, any financial advisor, and they can give them the basics of what these things are. But not too many advisors are actually implementing it in their own lives and have actually done it to a successful point. And so when it
And
comes to me,
go ahead.
when it comes to me and breaking down the life insurance side of it, it's like don't limit your mindset of life insurance just to cover your death. That's what has been taught to our community vastly. It's in case you die, here's enough money to make sure that your bills are taken care of, if that, or to make sure that you're not a burden to your loved ones. And the solutions and products can go much further than that, but you have to unlock that mindset first.
Yeah. And to the audience here, you got any questions, don't be shy. Put them in the chat for us. We want to get you involved in the conversation. As I said, Step is under the weather this morning. Got a spring virus, I guess, so he couldn't join us. So we're not having our formal presentation. We're having a very candid and informed conversation to myself and Andrew. We just want to share our experiences. You know, we want you to participate with us also. But coming to the education part of it, you're right. It's very difficult to convince people to do something if you haven't done it. And as you said earlier before the audience, I'm a great storyteller, and I've got tons of stories. I've made so many mistakes in the mortgage business, investing in property, you know, and I tell those stories. And people can tell whether you're telling a real story or whether you're just sharing something you've heard from somebody else, from
Right.
somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a mentor, and I always share this story. I got a mentor who I met probably around 94. He had a dry cleans in the corner of Jane and Wilson, right? And I used to I'm wearing my fancy suits. I'm all hyped up and I'm the big dog on the corner, you know what I mean? And this guy's in there, he's got his old Bonneville with rust on the side. You know the Pontiac Bonneville? The big,
Yep.
Vanderbilt SSC. That was a beautiful car, man. 3.8 inch in that bad boy, right? And he needed a haircut, and he was just there. And I would drop my clothes off and get my shirts pressed, and they took really good care of my clothes. If a button was broken, they replaced it. Great service. And I knew he was Guyanese, but I never knew anything about him because I heard the accent. And I was, selling my insurance and getting my business card. And then one day he said to me, he said, I need some insurance planning for me. And, I was new in the industry, so I brought this senior white agent with me. And mistake number one, because there's a cultural disconnect with this white guy who came from, I don't know, probably Sudbury, to this black man. And during the conversation, he started telling me his background. So he was an engineer who came from Guyana at 16 years old on a scholarship and went to Calgary, right? Went to one of the best schools in Guyana, right? Queen's College, for those who understand. So like Cornwall, Queen's College is one of the top schools in Guyana. That's where a lot of our top scholars came from during the 60s and 70s, and probably still do up to today. He went to Calgary or Edmonton, sorry, so in Alberta, and did his engineering degree, and he worked for a while. So he actually bought the dry cleaner on discount, pennies on the dollar, right? Because he was an engineer and was able to refurbish all the equipment. And that's another lesson. So I learned a lot from the conversations, right? And that's what people in Toronto need to start doing. Stop trying to create something from scratch with $10 in your pocket. Try and figure out how you can buy an existing business and take it to the next level, right? So that's number one. He bought an existing dry cleaners that was about to fall apart at one of the busiest corners, and still is in Toronto up to today, Jane and Wilson. If you look at that corner during at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, those bus stops there, I've got thousands of people within a 1 hour period. Then he explained to me how he bought his property. He bought his first rental property before he bought his house, a triplex on a street called Sackville. If you know downtown Toronto, Google it, Sackville. He bought a triplex, turned it into a fourplex. He bought his second property not too far away, a street called Berkeley. Same thing, 4 units, 3 units turned into 4 units. These were Victorian type homes, all of them were older, they needed help. But he was an engineer. So when it comes to fixing the furnace, the boilers, electrical, a lot of stuff he was able to do himself. Now, if we can do it ourselves, you have to make sure that your inner circle, your 5 closest friends, have some skill to bring to the equation other than eating your food and drinking your beer when they come to your house. If you can turn a wrench or fix a pipe or run some electrical cable or do some drywall, then you and I aren't friends. Or if you can't find me money for a project, then we're not going to be friends. This makes no sense. What's your value proposition to the equation? But he remained living in his home, his apartment in Don Mills, while he bought these properties. The banks thought he was crazy, right? Then he bought his dream house 5 years later, because by then he got great cash flow from these 2 rental properties. He has 8 units now, 8 doors he owns, each paying him at the time was $1,000 a month. Because they're downtown, they're close to University of Toronto. His tenants weren't students, they were lecturers. And that's the other part of the concept I learned about it. Most of us, when we buy investment property and we focus on student rentals, but their academic staff, people doing their doctorate or doing their masters, who come into these university cities or university communities in other parts of the world, and then they need to live somewhere. And they don't want a room to rent because they come with their families sometimes, they come with their wives and children. So your rental audience is very, very different based on the kind of property you have, right? So the lessons I learned from him over the years were tremendous, right? He sold one of the properties, I think, 2021, he sold, I think, for $3 million. He called me and he says to me, Ray, what should I do? He's in his 70s now. He had some health issues. And I got a call one day. He said, Ray, I've always respected your opinion. I said, man, you always put me in the spot with these personal questions. I don't like answering personal questions for clients because, it's a response which I don't really want to have.
Right.
I asked him, what's your health like? He said, his health is reasonably good, and stuff like that. And I said, so what do you want to do? You still have the investing bug. I said, you've got a $3 million property, it's tax-free. And the other thing he did, he sold the principal residence about 10 years ago and moved in to one of those fourplexes. Now it says tax planning. And you should have some insight in this, right? So that fourplex became his residence. Now, I'm not an accountant, so you want to talk to your accountant, make sure this works for you, for those in the audience, right? One of the fourplex became his principal residence. He's lived there for about probably 5 years now. So when he sold it, there was some capital gains. There was some tax, there's adjusted cost base and stuff like that you got to figure out at some point in time. So there is some tax implication, I would think. But the bulk of the money he walked away with was tax-free money. So he bought it for 270,000 in 1995 and sold it 30 years later for $3 million. Now, I don't know any other formula to create intergenerational wealth easier than owning and investing in real estate. And I started my investment journey in the stock market. So I've been a stockbroker, investment advisor, all of those things. But the lessons, and that's why having conversations with the elders in our community are very important. No, I just shared you the calls, notes, and the successes. But there were many challenges he faced along the line. I mean, he had family challenges, he had challenges with tenants, but the end result is that $3 million jackpot. Now, there's a second property. You have two of them, Berkeley and Sackville. Now he's now moved into the second property. So he's renting three, living in one. He can sell the second one now, it's spent residence. I mean, and again, an accountant will have to give us the detail on how the tax would, how Revenue Canada would be involved in the conversation. I'm pretty sure they're going to want a piece of that pie. I mean, you've gone from $300,000 to $3 million. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of tax.
Right? That's a lot of taxes. Yes,
that's a lot of tax benefit.
And that's where the plan is. And that's why the conversation with that. So if you as an advisor haven't been mentored by somebody who's actually done stuff, you haven't done it yourself, how do you have this conversation with your clients? I can tell you another story. I used to flip with an older gentleman out in Hamilton, flip properties for those who don't understand the term flip. And he knew Hamilton very well. He lived there for like probably 40 years by the time I met him. Older gentleman at the time. And, you know, he would find these properties downtown Hamilton. And I was a finance guy. I found the mortgages. And he would go, and he was a contractor, very good contractor. He can build from scratch. And he would go in and, you know, do all the work and put together a budget. And I always remember this one story where what he told me to do, you can take a small 2-bedroom bungalow in Hamilton on the east side, or one of those very, like 900 square feet houses, and they got these very small bedrooms, right? And he used to dig down in the basement, the crawl space. So I say you have like a 6-foot crawl space, he would dig down another 3 feet to now make it a 7.5 or 8-foot basement, right? And you go now from a small 900 square foot home to probably 1,500 square feet of living space. And you can now change it into having your family room in the basement, that kind of stuff. Great idea, right? Novel. Now, these homes are old. They're built in the 1920s. These are pre-wartime homes, pre-1940s, right? If you run into a structural problem, it becomes a nightmare. And I remember us doing a project on one home once, and one of the entire basement wall caved in.
Oh.
Right? So that $10,000 refurbished renovation cost is now gone to about $40,000. Now, if you're only doing one project a year, you're dead. But if you're doing 10 projects a year, you level out, you still win. So, and that's why I stay away from the small one deal. It doesn't make sense. The risk is too large for the reward. When you're buying property, get into 4 units or more. Say from these studios and 1-bedroom condos, they don't make any sense. If you've got a tenant who's not paying you rent, you're dead in the water. We had a tenant here in Jacksonville in one of our rentals who didn't pay us for 6 months. It didn't make me broke. We weren't, you know what I'm saying? It's an older woman, she had a health issue, and we were sentimental to her situation. And if I had more properties here, I would have let her stay living in the place rent-free. Because there's also a moral obligation to our elders who are struggling. Right? So when you build your investment portfolio, yes, you want to make sure it's profitable and it's going to scale up. But at the same time, if you're in this environment where there's seniors who are dealing with, you know, housing affordability issues, particularly in the US, we have a lot of military who've come back with mental health challenges. and they can't fit into a regular environment. You want to be able to offer something to those uh, who don't. So it's not always about getting the maximum rent on your home. It's about building something that is sustainable. And when your children see you doing that kind of stuff, they see you building and scaling and having that empathy approach to building your investment portfolio, they will do the same thing. I mean, you've met Stefan, right? Like, Steph is like one of the nicest people.
Same mindset as you.
Same, and my other two kids are the same. Darren and Alika are exactly the same thing. Alika is a little more, women I tend to see tend to be a little more uh, focused, and not focused, a little more. Uh, and it's where the society has sort of shaped them here. Particularly Black women, they tend to be a little more aggressive in their approach. But for a lot of our younger Black men who've been raised in the right environment, it's easy to deal with them when it comes to doing stuff. Yeah, but it's we want to have the conversations. We have a lot of products we offer. I mean, your infinite banking concept is an amazing product, but we want to let clients understand why it's important to have those products. I mean, if you read about some of the wealthiest white families in America, um, a lot of them created their wealth through insurance products. There's insurance as part of their portfolio. And you can probably speak to that
Yeah,
better than I
I
can.
could definitely speak to that on another call in regards to how they view insurance not just as a risk mitigation, but as far as building and protecting their cash reserves. And we can get into that all day, but we are now approaching the end of our time.
Yeah,
And, those are great stories, Ray. You
I
know,
thank you very much, man. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. I got to walk to the tape recorder and start recording them. Yeah. I mean, I think Steph told you in one of our last conversations. Everybody comes into the office. We talk about in the morning.
mhm.
Um, and I mean, he has gleaned so much from our conversations. I mean, as a younger child, I filled the role as father, but now that we're both adult men, our conversation is very, very different. And I mean,
But
even I'm
he
not
now
in
has his
Toronto.
own experiences, and
Yeah, and I can give him references, and I can tell him, like, I mean, every challenge he faces, I tell him, been there, done that. I
mm,
mean, and the one thing I always tell our kids is don't be afraid to ask for help. And that's the other thing that a lot of Black folks have a challenge with. We don't want anybody to know our story or know what we're dealing with. And I was guilty of that also. Like, oh, I don't want anybody to know my story. It's my personal business. But that challenge you're facing is not unique to you, right? Like I always tell people, for every bad story I can tell you 10.
mm.
I've worked myself for more than 25 years. I've got a whole lot of bad stories. And I know how to navigate the system in the process because I had to learn on the fly, I survived the 25 years and I passed the baton on to Stefan. So I mean, there's lots of challenges from having, I've had cars repossessed, not cars, one car repossessed. And, I've had the good credit and the bad credit, and I've, had litigation issues and all sort of stuff. So, I mean, we have to have conversation, and I mean, while virtual conversations are great, um, it's much easier when we sit down with each other, eat some food or drink an adult beverage or a cup of tea or coffee together. It's very relaxing. Um, and that is what our elders did. Like I grew up with my grandparents, and every Saturday my grandfather would have his friends over, and they bring out some of the best whiskey and scotch and have some food and some peanuts, and they sit there for 2, 3 hours. And the men were from different backgrounds, right? So my grandfather was a pharmacist, and he had one cousin who was a senior police officer. The other one was a senior manager at an insurance company. One was a school teacher. One was a gold miner. Um, and I think there's another pharmacist in the conversation also because there were two pharmacists in the conversation. But in those conversations, I learned so much.
Mm.
8, 9 years, I just sat there. At 7 years old, I sat and just listened to the conversation. You weren't allowed to say anything. I'd sit there with my Hardy Boys or whatever book I'm reading, quite quietly reading my Hardy Boy book and listen to that. And today, as an adult, all those conversations are now part of who I am.
Hmm.
But if it was a young man, a young Black man, you aren't part of those conversations. How do you navigate this world we live in? And who's going to teach you?
Very
Right?
difficult. Very, very
Very difficult.
difficult.
Right? So I mean, even
You're at the whim of what, TikTok and Instagram?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and those are great resources. I mean, because we're recording our conversation, we're probably going to put it on YouTube, right?
Mm.
And that's why, I keep saying we got to have these casual, off the cuff conversations because then we share honestly,
Yeah.
right? When it's scripted, then we don't really get the raw
To the
emotion of the
raw,
conversation.
the
You
meat
don't
of
get
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But when you share it unscripted, and so like this morning, Step was like, "Dad, I'm so sorry, man. I really listen, man. Life, things happen. Right? He actually cancel. I said, no, we're not gonna cancel the call. And I called you. So you want us to do it? He said, okay, so let's free flow, right? Um, because this is when our thoughts flow the best, the ideas flow the best, and whoever's listening to us, they may learn a thing or two, right? And they can put it into practice. I mean, we make a big excuse with, oh, we've got all these single children raised by single parents. That excuse is not an excuse in my book. My parents were divorced when I was 3 years old. I never knew my dad. You know what I mean? So don't come to me the whole I never knew my father bullshit because it's not gonna go well with me. Right? No, I'm not. That's an
Excuse is
excuse.
just that, an
Yeah,
excuse.
you like had great friends who had great parents, and I was around their homes and I saw their fathers function. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Right? I saw um, people who had parents who were alcoholics and used to beat their wives in the Caribbean. Um, I saw men who had multiple women, and they appeared to have a great home life, but they had children. I mean, the criminal experience is very different, right? So, I mean, stop making that using that as a crutch, right? Find a mentor. I was at an event last Saturday here in Jackson. I know we got to wrap up or guess what you want to get going. But I'm sure I was at an event here in Florida last Saturday, and I walked in, and the way you carry was very important to me. You know the way I dress almost all the time. And I walked in, the young man stopped me and said, good day, sir, you're looking important. I want to meet you. And he introduced himself to me. And he's at a program called Year Up, where every year they want you to get up one step further. Great name for the program.
Mm.
So, and he's probably in his early 20s, and he's got his dreadlocks on, and stuff like that. And he's well dressed, well spoken. And he's talking to me. He says, what do you do? I hand him my card. He put the price. He says, okay. See, do you want to be a mentor? I just enjoy talking to you, right? No, he made that step.
That first
But
initial,
I'm
which
very
tells you
introverted.
a
I'm very
lot.
I'm very quiet. I'm very quiet.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you and I are friends. I can talk to you forever. But in most environments, I don't talk to anybody. If you approach me, I'll speak to you. But he came to me, right? And I had 3 people tell me the same thing at that event, right? You look important. I want to get to know you, right?
Mm.
So our youth in Toronto have to have that same approach. They've got to step out of their comfort zone. But if you stop me and ask me a question, I will answer you. If a
Hmm.
young man stops you and asks you a question, you will talk to him. It's
And that's
just who
and
we
that's
are.
what catches people off guard. They're like, I didn't think you'd be so approachable. And a lot of people find that when they talk to people of success, they're like, I never thought they would be that approachable because we're all human and we all want to share. We
Yeah.
all want to share something that we've either learned or obtained. It's just some if you're a good person, that's just what you
Yeah.
want.
And it
And
goes beyond race, color, and ethnicity.
yeah.
I've dealt with all sorts of people in my life. I had a business partner who was Muslim. He shared my office. He prayed 4 times a day in my office, 5 times a day in my office. And I stopped keeping beer in my fridge out of respect for him.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because and he had 2 sons. They both played soccer. So there's a commonality because most of us as men are fathers. So the first thing we speak about is our children.
Yeah.
I was at the bank yesterday, and the person who's helping me is a white dude from Florida, right? White Southern guy. And I mean, he sat down with his son. His son sang at the Carnegie Hall 2 weeks ago, and the emotion in his voice and the excitement. And he was telling me, he says, we're all the same. And you go past the initial
What
facade we
you
put
look
up.
like, what you dress. Yeah.
Yeah, he had this big long beard down to his chest, like a
Hmm.
big white dude. He's like 6'3" and real nice guy, right? And I've had the same thing too. I'm very serious. I don't smile a lot. People look at you. I mean, I never knew I used to talk, right? But we gotta talk to each other, man. So thank you very much, Andrew, for spending this morning with me. I hope Steph is better. And then we will have our next conversation a month from now, our morning money conversation, where we will share some case studies with you on the infinite banking concept and how it's applied in certain situations and the home equity release or the reverse mortgage and its application. And if we have the time, I'll share some more anecdotes from my life and journey. Over the last 30 years as an immigrant, but 35 years as an immigrant and living in Toronto, and 30 years as a independent consultant business owner in the Toronto landscape and Toronto environment. Thank you very much. Have yourself a fantastic day. And do enjoy the beginning of the summer months in Toronto.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great day.